A wave of discontent is sweeping Britain, a raw and potent anger that is now impossible to ignore. We've all seen the images: fiery clashes outside hotels housing migrants, mass protests in cities from Southampton to London, and confrontations that speak to a nation at a tipping point. Slogans are shouted on the streets not by a fringe few, but by a growing number of British youths and patriots who feel their country is slipping through their fingers. They are shouting, "We want our country back, mass deportation now, and protect our kids." But why? Why has this sentiment taken hold? Why do many British people who pride themselves on their heritage and love for their country now say they no longer want immigration? Today, we're going to delve deep into the reasons behind this powerful shift. This isn't a story you'll often hear from the mainstream media. This is the story from the perspective of those on the ground, the Patriots who believe they are fighting for the very soul of Britain. The most visible sign of this change is the raw anger directed at the current immigration system. In towns like Epping, what began as local concern has repeatedly drawn hundreds of protesters to hotels used to house asylum seekers. These scenes have been replicated across the country, from Rotherham to Norwich, often triggered by local incidents that ignite long-simmering tensions. For the people participating in these demonstrations, this isn't about hate. They see it as a desperate act of self-preservation. They point to government figures showing that the cost of housing asylum seekers in hotels ran into the billions of pounds, paid for by the British taxpayer. Meanwhile, they see their own public services, from the NHS to social housing, stretched to the breaking point. The question they ask is simple and direct. Why are newcomers being housed in hotels when our own veterans are homeless and our own families can't get a doctor's appointment? This has fostered a powerful sense of alienation, a belief that the government is prioritizing the needs of migrants over its own native citizens. It's a sentiment echoed in the chants of "Whose streets? Our streets," a defiant cry from people who feel they're becoming strangers in their own land. But the concerns go far deeper than just economics and resources. For many, this is a cultural battle. They look at their towns and cities and see a landscape that is changing at a pace they find alarming, threatening the very identity and values that they believe define Britain. A significant part of this anxiety centers on the integration of different cultures, particularly from some Muslim communities. Patriots argue that when people come to the UK, they should respect its traditions, laws, and heritage. Instead, they see what they describe as a refusal to integrate. They hear stories of demands for the institution of Sharia law in parts of the country, which they view as a direct challenge to the sovereignty of British law and the nation's Christian foundations. This isn't about rejecting individuals, they argue, but about protecting a way of life. They see Britain as a historically Christian country, with a set of values built on that foundation: democracy, freedom of speech, and mutual respect for different faiths under one unifying national identity. They express concern that these values are being eroded, not enriched, by multicultural policies that they feel encourage separation rather than integration. This fear is encapsulated in a growing movement to reclaim and reassert a distinctly British identity, pushing back against what they perceive as the dominance of foreign cultural influences. Beyond the cultural and economic anxieties, there is a more visceral fear, the fear for personal safety. For many British people, the rise in violent crime, especially knife attacks, is directly linked in their minds to immigration. The news cycle often features reports of stabbings and violent assaults, and when a suspect is identified as a foreign national, it reinforces a narrative that the government has imported danger. This fear was thrown into sharp relief during the riots of 2024. A horrific stabbing attack on young girls in Southport was initially and falsely blamed on a Muslim asylum seeker. That misinformation acted as a spark on a mountain of dry tinder, igniting riots across England. Even after the authorities confirmed the perpetrator was British-born, the underlying anger didn't just disappear. For many, the event and the initial rumours confirmed their deepest fears about what uncontrolled immigration could lead to. It tapped into a potent feeling that their children are no longer safe. This is also where the deeply sensitive and controversial issue of grooming gangs comes into play. The public consciousness is scarred by high-profile cases such as the one in Rotherham, where men of predominantly Pakistani origin were convicted of the systematic sexual abuse of young white girls. For many patriots, these cases are not isolated criminal acts, but evidence of a deeper cultural sickness and a catastrophic failure by the authorities to protect the most vulnerable. The slogan, "Save Our Kids," is not just a political statement, it's an emotional plea from parents and grandparents who fear for the safety of their children in a country they no longer recognize. Let's talk more about money. Because for the average Briton, struggling with a cost of living crisis, the economics of immigration just don't add up. They are told that immigration is necessary for economic growth, but what they experience firsthand is pressure. Pressure on schools, on doctors' surgeries, and on a housing market that has become unaffordable for many young people. Then, they see the government spending a reported £2.5 billion in 1 year to house asylum seekers in hotels. They hear about migrants receiving financial support while they themselves are choosing between heating and eating. This creates a powerful and politically explosive narrative of them versus us. It's a feeling that their tax money is being used to support people who, in their view, have often entered the country illegally and have not contributed to the system. This is a core grievance. The sentiment is that the government has broken its fundamental contract with the people, that a citizen who works hard and pays their taxes should be the priority. And when they see that contract being broken, day after day their frustration turns to anger. They feel that the political class is not just incompetent, but is actively working against their interests. Ultimately, for the British patriots and youths at the forefront of this movement, the blame lies squarely with one group, the political establishment. For years, they have listened to politicians from all major parties promise to control immigration, to get a grip on the borders, and to reduce the numbers. For years, they have seen those promises broken. They watched as the previous Conservative government, despite tough rhetoric, presided over record high levels of net migration. They hear the current Labour government talk about new plans, but they see little fundamental change. The feeling of betrayal is immense. They believe they have been consistently lied to by an out-of-touch elite in Westminster who are more interested in appearing virtuous on the world stage than in addressing the real-world consequences of their policies on their own people. This profound disillusionment is why you now hear calls for radical action. Slogans like "Stop the Boats" have been co-opted by the mainstream, but for those on the streets the demand is far more urgent and uncompromising. Mass deportation now. They have lost faith in the system's ability to fix itself and are now demanding a complete reset. This sentiment has fueled the rise of right-wing political figures and parties like Reform UK, who are seen as the only ones willing to voice these concerns without apology. So when you see these protests on your screen, it's easy to dismiss them, but if you listen to the people involved, you'll hear a consistent and powerful message. It's a message of cultural anxiety from people who fear their national identity is being erased. It's a message of fear from parents who worry for their children's safety. It's a message of economic anger from taxpayers who feel their money is being spent on everyone but them. And above all, it's a message of profound betrayal aimed at a political class they believe has abandoned them. For these British youths and patriots, this is not a campaign of hate. They see it as a last-ditch effort to reclaim their country, to preserve their heritage, and to secure a future for their children in the land they call home. They believe they are fighting for the very soul of Britain, and they have no intention of backing down. That's the perspective you may not have heard. What are your thoughts? Is Britain at a historic turning point? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into the issues shaping our world. Thank you for watching.